You're listening to Radio Kidnappers, the voice of Hawke's Bay. This is the Acupuncture on Air program. Our pleasure, as always, to have on the hot seat Heiko from the Acupuncture Clinic in Hastings. How you going, Heiko?
I'm very good, Ken, and you? What's been happening with you?
Oh, it's not much. I've been sort of flat out like a lizard drinking, much like yourself.
Well, I'm just getting used to this sort of supposed spring weather. It's just been...
It's been up and down, hasn't it?
It's almost cool, and raining.
And then it's boiling hot. What do you do? What's the man to do?
Yeah.
But you said acupuncture can fix anything.
Yeah, and...
Not the weather.
But not the weather, but the weather does, and we're going to find out later in the show, the weather does affect people's health in many ways, and we're going to be talking about hay fever today.
Yep, that's right.
And as you know, well, the weather, the environment can certainly aggravate hay fever and bring it up.
But before we talk about hay fever, just remind our listeners where you are.
I'm in 206 Charles Street, Hastings. You can go to my website, acu123.co.nz.
Indeed, and you also represent very well on YouTube now.
Yep, and that's finding out is a great way, I think, to get that information out there about what acupuncture can do and help and so forth, because once it's up there, it's easy to find, it's always there.
Yep.
And of course, they get to see you on the...
Radio with pictures.
Yeah.
What more can they want? But obviously I'm not the star because you get the full face, so I just get the side.
Yeah. But, it's leading up to when we have our breakfast show on TV3 or something. It's just that stepping stone.
It's a moment away, isn't it?
Yeah.
Anyway, we're going to talk about hay fever, and is it just my imagination, or is Hawke's Bay one of the good spots or not to get hay fever?
No, what it is, there's about 3 areas in New Zealand that are known that have a high incidence of it. We've got Christchurch, Hawke's Bay, and the Waikato region. And
you've got down here that maybe it's because of pollution. What about pollen?
Yeah, the thing is that a lot of people think it's pollution, and what I found was I've had patients who have moved here from Beijing.
Yep.
I don't think you can get any more polluted.
No, dead right.
Polluted. And they lived there. They never had hay fever in their life, and then they moved to Hawke's Bay to the clean green New Zealand, and they get hay fever or they get sinus problems. And I get people, I call them immigrants from Auckland.
Yeah.
They coming down here in their droves. They come down here, they say, I've been here, I've never had hay fever a day in my life in Auckland with all the extra pollution from the cars and everything else. They come here, they get it. Yeah, it's definitely, the pollens and stuff in the air. And if you think about Hawke's Bay, and you think about Christchurch, those areas, they're literally surrounded by, tens of thousands of hectares of pine forest, Pinus radiata. That has that little yellow, dusty pollen stuff.
Loads of it at my place.
And then, as I said, I can remember here and in Christchurch, sometimes I would go out of the house and then I thought my car was black. It's actually
yellow.
It's actually yellow,
Yeah.
And then and that's stuff you're breathing it in.
Yeah.
And in terms of comparing it to what we were like naturally 100 years ago when there was 10,000 different varieties of trees and shrubs and bushes and everything everywhere, but we now got this intensive, concentrated thing. Then geographically, the wind blows.
Yep.
Blows it into Hawke's Bay, into Hastings, into Napier, into Havelock, and there you go.
Just as a side, I see when I was a young fellow, I used to get asthma.
Yeah.
But when I used to go to the big city, I never used to get asthma.
Yeah.
And I think, wow. I love the city. I love the pollution. I love the smell of petrol because it didn't get asthma.
Yeah, well, the petrol might have been killing the...
Okay, some people get it, some people don't. Some people get more than others. I mean, can acupuncture help, and why does it affect some people more than others?
Again, it comes down to what Chinese medicine would regard it as sort of constitutional patterns of people. Everyone is sort of born with a tendency for an imbalance. And then some people, because of lifestyle, work, diet, relationships, work circumstances, they will develop other patterns of disharmony, we call them, and it might be a spleen deficiency, it might be a kidney deficiency, and so then it's a bit like the needle on the haystack.
Yep.
It's like your spleen might be just that 70% weaker than an average person, but you're just getting through. Bang, you move down to Hawke's Bay, you get the pollen on top of it, and then it gives you the problem. And so the Chinese medicine acupuncture, we're working on the treating these constitutional patterns, and that's why, as you said, well, I'm here, my wife's here, I get it, she doesn't.
Yeah. Why is that? That's a burning question, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, again, because it's like constitutionally, you are different to her.
Yes, indeed.
And then, but also then, the other person or the neighbour or your partner or someone, they might get some other problem. And it just comes back down to the strengths and the weaknesses within your general constitution.
Yeah, so, there's a whole bunch of stuff, isn't it? You've got your blocked up head, you've got your swollen eyes. Where does that come from?
Yeah, well, this is the thing. Chinese medicine will say, the lungs, we say the opening of the lungs is the nose.
Yep.
Right? And then, the lungs is to do with breathing and opening the skin and so forth. So if you're getting this extra stuff coming into the lungs, it's going to block it up and fill it up, and so then the body can't get rid of it. So opening of the lungs is the nose. You get the sneezing, you get the runny nose, you get and then that spreads from there, and can give you the runny eyes and the headaches and whatever.
And as to be expected, of course, with acupuncture, it's not quite that simple, because now we're also going to bring into play the kidneys and the spleen. Yeah,
it's different organs. Control different aspects, and there's more than one cause for hay fever, but a common one is, say, the lungs. Another one is we can say is the kidneys. Some people have constitutionally weak kidneys. Chinese medicine, we say is that the kidneys, when they're healthy and when the lungs are in balance, they grab the lung energy. So there's a harmony of the two organs working together. If the kidneys are weak, which can come about from many other reasons, it won't be able to grab the lung energy, so the lung energy gets excessive or gets stuck, and then you can get symptoms, like cough, like wheezing, like phlegm, like sinus, like hay fever. So these are the thing. But in terms of the hay fever, particularly with my experience of now having worked in Dunedin, Christchurch, Auckland and Hawke's Bay, in New Zealand, I found that, but particularly in Christchurch and in Hawke's Bay, finding that the liver is more of the underlying mechanism,
really
leading to the high incidence of hay fever and stuff. And my own sort of theory for that is one we've got we're surrounded by the pollen, and then because of the wind and the geographical situation, the pollen blows over here. But at the same time, like all around the edges of the town and the city, we have, vineyards, we've got orchards, we've got apple plantations, who are all spraying, wonderful sprays and insecticides and all this. And a lot of that stuff goes into the air, right, as not just necessarily onto the fruit. So then you got this microscopic particles of this stuff going into the air, it attaches with the pollen, that all then blows over into town, gets on your car, or gets in your air conditioning system or whatever. So it's a double whammy. So you've got not only does your liver have to deal with trying to detox the pollen, but it's also trying to detox the extra insecticides and all the other stuff. And that's why I find if I treat the liver, I'm getting much better results. And funny, our classic Chinese textbooks mention the liver as one cause of hay fever, but it was always it's not a very common one. The more common one is lung deficiency or kidney deficiency, but my experience now, it's definitely the liver.
Well, before we talk about the acupuncture points, just an observation that I make, I live right across the road from a vineyard, the Mission Vineyard.
Yeah.
And of course they must spray every now and then. I've never seen them because I leave in the dark, and I go home in the dark.
Yeah.
But and my garden is full of flowering trees at the moment.
Yeah.
And I've got that yellow stuff all over the ground, like you were talking about earlier, that pollen's blown in from somewhere. Yeah. And it doesn't affect me at all. But my daughter, she can come round, and if we've got a vase of flowers on the table, those flowers have got to go. Yeah. Because she immediately gets hay fever.
Starts sneezing and whatever.
Is that weird or what?
It's not necessarily weird. It's just that's her constitution, her weakness or whatever. And so in that regards, we would be looking at to strengthen her so that she doesn't have to, deal with that. And from our sort of point of view, we were sort of saying, well, the solution is not to get rid of the flowers.
No.
Because then she's actually then making herself more susceptible to more and more thing. And then when she finally gets it gets even worse, So she's got the address.
Yeah. That's right. Okay, so the liver acupuncture points, we're going to come across to you. You're going to give us a needle. What are you going to do?
Well, again, the liver meridian, and some people might be interested, you can just type in liver meridian into Google and, a little chart will come up. But it basically starts down at the big toe, sort of runs up the foot on the inside of the leg, goes up to the groin, goes up through the labrum and goes to the liver.
Yep.
And then from there we have like an internal connection that can run up, and it runs up right to the top of the head. And that's why, the liver meridian and the associated organ can have a number of different symptoms and complaints associated with it.
Yep.
One of them, for example, headache right on top of the head. The liver's a lot to do with anger, irritability, impatience, and as well as depression, because we sort of say depression is like instead of being able to be angry and let it out, you're bringing it back in,
keeping it in,
right?
Yeah.
And so then that's why you might use liver points, whatever, to we say free flow the course of the liver meridian to soothe the emotions.
Yeah. So that applies to everyone, doesn't it?
That's right. Yeah. And we say that liver chi stagnation or liver energy blockage is one of the most common patterns. Not only here, but in China, anywhere in the world, and it has been for hundreds of years, thousands of years. I mean, as people get, have grumpy bosses or
can't believe that. So you got acupuncture points on the inside of the leg.
Yeah. And one of the things what I do with my clinic is often people might come in and they have hay fever, and then and they go, oh yeah, and they're sort of expecting me to press their nose or do something. And I go down and I'm pressing it and say, is that one sore? Is that sore? Yeah, it is. And so then I might use work on the liver meridian and use a technique to get rid of that blockage there, and that then can free up. And as well as often they'll say they feel a little bit emotionally better. They feel better within themselves, So, and we, a lot of these studies now, they'll sort of say one of the things is that people report that they have an increased sense of well-being. I mean, it sounds very vague.
It does.
But unless you've experienced it, then it's sort of like, I don't know what it is, but I feel a bit better.
Now, for the last few weeks, we've been thrashing along Moxibustion. I don't see Moxibustion in here anyway. Don't you use Moxibustion for hay fever?
Oh, you can definitely use it, particularly like on the back. We don't use it like on around the face or the nose or whatever, but particularly like say in the upper back, on sort of behind the lungs, if you like, we use some Moxibustion. It's called heat perception Moxibustion, where you put little cones of it on the back and you light it and you get a little bit of warmth, and then you take it off as if you're trying to drag out the inflammation from the lungs. If the kidneys are the underlying cause, if they're weak, deficient, cold, we might do the Moxa on the lower back. So yeah, definitely, it's the Moxibustion is a part of it.
I suppose because we've already mentioned it, spring is in the air. I suppose you're inundated with clients at the moment, and again, unfortunately, I think maybe a lot of people might come to you as a last resort, but normally we go to the chemist, wouldn't we? Get
that's what most people do.
Or we get some pills and.
They get an antihistamine or something like that, or they get the, some kind of spray or whatever it is. And I guess, when it's not severe and it's not strong and that's just enough to just sort of get rid of it for a short time, they do that. And, with acupuncture and or herbs and Moxibustion, there's a recommended course of treatment. You need to have, to get yourself better in tune. But it's just like around now that I'm starting to see the patients complaining of it, and often they're coming in for something else, because I do see people from many different conditions, and they might be coming in for a tennis elbow, but then how are you? Oh, my elbow's getting better. But geez, my nose is driving me mad with the thing. And I get it around sort of September, October. and then it's sort of like, then there's a bit of a drop down, but then after New Year, seems to come back. There's some people get, we call it summer, hay fever, and the other one's sort of spring hay fever. And some people just have it severe all the time, and they're more the kidney type, the people who are having it all year long.
Indeed. Now, what about the atmosphere, pressure, etc.? They can affect the sinus and the nose, and you've got a story about Melbourne.
Yeah, yep. And as you know, you would have heard many times, you hear the people say, the cloudy weather's come in. My arthritic knee, it's starting to ache. I can tell it's going to rain. I don't care what the weatherman says. It's going to rain, right. And 9 times out of 10, they're actually more right than the weatherman. And then the atmosphere, it affects water.
Yeah.
So it affects the water in your system, in your brain, in your mind, in the levels of your blood, and so that it can have adverse effects. And I think it was a couple of years ago in Melbourne they had some sort of severe atmospheric pressure problem and heat in the summer in combination. And I think 9 people actually died from asthma attacks. They couldn't get to the hospital, whatever, in time. My
brother was one of those people.
You're kidding?
No.
I'm so sorry to hear that. No, that's what I never would have.
No. It was, and they said to him, I think he went to the hospital. They said, oh, well, no, you'll be right.
Right.
He wasn't.
No, that's a terrible.
He should have come to see you, Heiko.
Well,
I'd still be here.
It's possible, because acupuncture is used like in the hospital system in China for emergency asthma attacks and things like that. So, it's hard to turn back the clock, but
exactly right. Yeah. So it's a funny old world, isn't it?
Yeah.
Anyway, so look, we do get a lot of hay fever in this area, and it must be a big part of your business, or is it not?
No, it's not more than anything else. As I said, I'm pretty well. I specialise in being a generalist. I see everything and anything, and anything from women's problems to headaches, to migraines, to sinus, to bowel problems. To
you can do it all, like
and it goes in phases.
Yeah.
Like sometimes I don't see any. I've had phases where I have a whole bunch of women who have breech baby, then I use a Moxibustion technique to turn the baby, and then I don't see any for 4 months, and then suddenly there's a whole bunch that come here. You just can't
pick it.
Yeah.
Well, the question I'm going to ask next, and I always ask it, is that someone like my daughter, for instance, she's just got to smell a flower in a vase, and she's got it. So, coming to see you, how soon would she be feeling better?
Again, that's a hard one. I could do a rough recommendation of what a course of treatment would be about 6 or 8 visits. And I would be expecting after sort of 5 or 6 visits that there is an improvement. And sometimes it's like I used to walk in a room if there was some lilies there on the thing, I'd sneeze 20 times, and then it'd be like I got in, I only sneezed 8 times, and then I got over it really quickly. So it's sort of like you sort of get better, but it sort of goes like up and down, as opposed to sort of you do this treatment, you're better, and it stays good for that long and then stops working. That's sort of how a Western medical drug works, but we look at it, you're slowly improving the thing, so there's subtle little changes occurring along the path.
So how often will we come and see you? Will we come and see you every year, or would this 6 treatments be ongoing? Would it last us next year and the year after?
Well, I would say what you would do is just come in when you can come in, but you'd would do a course of treatment. Don't wait for spring to come. You want it because your body's unbalanced now. It's still going to be unbalanced next year.
Yeah, that's right.
So don't sort of wait for it to happen and then come in. It's like with migraines. It's like, you get a migraine every month. Well, you don't wait till the day of the migraine to come in. You want to start getting your body sort of restored now to prevent that from coming up.
Just about out of time, Heiko. Now, before we get to your weird song of the day...
no, it can't be too weird. I thought there must be.
I've never heard of it.
I'm sure there's one other person listening to this that will know that song.
Just remind our listeners, if we're suffering from hay fever in particular, but any other problems that we have that acupuncture or moxibustion might fix, where are you?
I'm in 206 Charles Street. Have a look at my website, acu123.co.nz.
And what's your song?
And the song, well, it's from the Rolling Stones Tattoo album, which I know you have heard of.
Yes, I have heard of that album.
But the song is called Slave.
And
that's how I feel, with working with you,
And about all I can tell you about that song is that it's called Slave, but one good thing about it, and I'm going to find out very shortly, it's Billy Preston playing on an electric piano, and Pete Townsend, he does the backing vocals.
No, that I didn't know.
Look at that.
That's why I come to this radio show, to learn these things.
Here it is.